Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about some breakout players on the offensive side of the ball. That was part four of that series, so definitely stay tuned for part four of the defensive side, and then possibly a part five for the offense as well. But let's jump into Spotlight Wednesday and let's talk about the Clemson Tigers. They are a team that is really under a lot of pressure going into this year, and Dabo Swinney probably the most pressured among the people in Clemson, South Carolina right now. Garrett Riley is not far behind him. So Dabo Swinney, obviously, as we know, is not a big fan of using the transfer portal. He has stuck to those guns. They have not brought in anyone from the transfer portal, but they have lost a number of guys to the transfer portal that are big-time players, and also they have a number of players going on to the NFL. So let's break down all of the people that they will have to replace and then kind of get into how they can replace them. So the biggest one on the offensive side of the ball comfortably is Will Shipley. Losing that guy is an absolutely huge deal for this team. He was essentially all of their offense at certain times for in 2023. When Cade Klubnik struggled, he was a huge piece for them, and he's someone that is going to be really hard to replace. They do have Phil Maffa that has played a number of roles right behind him, so I think he's someone that is going to have to step up for Clemson if they're going to be formidable. Bo Collins found his way into the transfer portal and to Notre Dame. He's someone that flashed at times in that wide receiver group, but they're going to need as much help and experience as they can get in that room, so losing him is not necessarily what you wanted. And then finally, they're losing a 4-year starter at center in Will Putnam. Definitely something that some people might not think is a huge deal, but if you watch the Rose Bowl game between Alabama and Michigan, you fully understand how important it is for a center to have the ball exactly where he needs to be pretty much every single time. So I think that is a huge loss. It'll be very interesting to see who steps into that role and how that all that goes going into 2024. But the defensive side of the ball was, to be totally honest with you, torn to absolute pieces. There are a lot of players heading out the door, and it starts with Isaiah Thomas on the edge role. He is someone that is huge for this team over the last couple of years. Tyler Davis and Ruki Ororo is someone, again, on the interior. Both those guys were very important to this team and really set the precedent for a lot of the energy and a lot of the physicality that they played with in 2023. And then Jeremiah Trotter, in my opinion, is the biggest loss of the group at linebacker. He was the emotional leader of this team, and he was someone that everyone turned to when they needed some assistance or they needed to know what to do. He was always doing the right thing, so they definitely need someone to step up into that position. Barrett Carter is the guy that I think is most equipped to do that, but there are definitely some other guys that need to step up as well. And then they had some guys leave in the port. Oh, Nate Wiggins is another one heading on to the NFL at corner. A huge loss for them. A very, very talented guy that was a huge piece for that defense last year. And then they lost some guys to the portal on the back end as well. Toriano Pride Jr. and Andrew Makuba found new places to play in Missouri and Texas, respectively. So both those guys, huge losses on that back end, especially with someone like Nate Wiggins walking out the door. And then just to add to the nightmare that is that back end right now, Sheridan Jones and Jalen Phillips are two guys that were big rotational guys over the past couple of years. They are on to possibly the NFL. I'm not exactly sure what their draft prospects look like, but at the end of the day, they are no longer on the Clemson football team, and they will need to replace tons of guys on the back end of that defense. But there are some things that are absolute non-negotiables when you talk about Clemson being successful in 2024, and I think it starts with Garrett Riley. As we watched throughout last year, Garrett Riley was brought over from TCU after that remarkable run to the national championship, and everyone thought that took Clemson's offense to the next level. Everyone thought that they were going to absolutely light the world on fire. Cade Klubnik was going to have a great year, and they were going to kind of get back to Clemson football. That never really took place. They were a little anemic at times on offense. They were a little confused, it seemed. They just weren't quite on the same page that they wanted to. And Cade Klubnik's success has a lot to do with what Garrett Riley can do in 2024 and how he sets him up for success. But he does have a couple of wide receivers that he can turn to, but he needs a guy to step up. There's no doubt about that. Antonio Williams is someone that has been there for quite some time. Tyler Brown is someone that was stepping into his own throughout last year. TJ Moore, an incoming freshman, is someone that could step into that role, but you need an alpha in that room by no stretch of the imagination. You need a guy that is absolutely the wide receiver one, because the most successful teams around college football always have that guy that they turn to when they need one, whether it's a wide receiver or in UGA's case, they had Brock Bowers the last couple of years. But you need that alpha in the receiving room that gives you an edge over other people, and any three of those guys could be it, but one absolutely needs to step up. And on the defensive side of the ball, things are a little bit tougher because you're losing a ton of guys. Let's start up front with Peter Woods. He is someone that was highly touted freshman coming out of the 2023 class, had a solid freshman year, did a lot of really, really good things, but now is the official leader of that defensive line. Definitely the most talented player, the player they're probably going to need the most from, and I expect him to give it to him. I think he is someone that is super, super impressive, can do a number of really incredible things. You can honestly put him out on the edge if you really want to in certain situations. So I expect him to fully blow up this season and be a big-time player for Clemson. Kobe McLeod is someone that's huge in the middle of that defense. He's slated to start right now at middle linebacker, so likely could be the guy with the headset. Barrett Carter is another person that I think possibly could get the headset as well. He's a very experienced guy, but you need more than one big-time linebacker in the ACC. You need more than one big-time linebacker if you want to be a national championship contender, and that's exactly what Clemson wants. So guys like Kobe McLeod or Wade Woodaz, both those guys are going to be super, super important for Clemson going into 2024. And then Avion Terrell is someone that needs to be huge on the back end of this defense. Obviously, we talked about Nate Wiggins leaving. He is the brother of A.J. Terrell, so Clemson fans have to feel pretty excited about this kid, but a huge shoes to fill with Nate Wiggins falling out of the picture, but I think he's definitely up to the task and very excited to see him kind of step onto the big stage there. But let's roll through their schedule real quick and see how they can kind of navigate it. First off, the first game is tough to navigate. Let's just put it that way. It is UGA, and I think UGA is going to win this game. To be honest, Clemson can change a lot of minds throughout spring, or in this game have a prime chance to change everyone's mind about the way that they think about them. Even if they don't win, in my opinion, I could be looking at Clemson totally differently after this game, because I just need to see Cade Klubnik feel confident. I don't want him to be timid in that game or nervous going up against Georgia. I want him to come out and be very confident. I want to see some of the players we just talked about on defense make some big plays. So while this is going to be a tough game to win for the Tigers, I won't lie, if they can, play a really, really tough game and do some of the things that are going to be important for them in the long run, I think they could get a lot of people's attention even with a loss. But obviously a win would be incredible. I think there's definitely a chance for that, for sure. But the game after that is App State at home. That's a little bit of a danger spot. App State, as we know, took down A&M a year ago, so could be interesting. Just keep an eye on that one. Then they do have a bye before opening ACC play against NC State at home. So that's definitely an interesting game. Grayson McCall coming in, probably his first game in the ACC. We'll see how he handles all of that. Clemson should likely win, but we'll see what happens there. And then Stanford in Week 5 should be a win. And then they have the big one against Florida State. They are at Florida State this time around, and this is the game that is biggest for them. This is probably the game that is biggest for the ACC and how everything works out there. So very interested to see what happens there. I think it's going to be quite the battle, but we'll have a better idea of what's going to happen once we get to Week 6 and we get to that game. But then they have at Wake Forest and Virginia at home before their second bye. So two games that are very navigable. They should be able to handle them pretty well. And then Louisville comes to Clemson. That is a huge game after the bye. And then they head to Virginia Tech and Pitt. Two games that are a little bit dangerous. Virginia Tech is a very interesting team with Kyron Drones as their quarterback, but I expect Clemson to be able to handle business, at least as of right now, in those games. And then they finish it off with the Citadel and then South Carolina, obviously, at home. So this schedule is relatively navigable. When you're playing UGA the first game of the season, it's going to be tough to have an easy schedule, but at the end of the day, I think they got a pretty good draw. So UGA to start the season at Florida State and Louisville are the big time games. I don't think there's any question about that. If you can go 2-1 in those games, that is a huge win for that program. If you go 3-0, people are talking about you as a national championship contender, and they absolutely should. So it'll be really interesting to see how this year develops for Clemson. This is obviously a huge year. Dabo Swinney has been under a little bit of fire for the way that he has gone about business in the transfer portal era. But at the end of the day, if he can start winning games again, no one's going to question him. So I think Cade Klubnik, Garrett Riley is going to be huge. That connection and the ability to take this offense to the next level. Peter Woods, I think, is going to be one of the best defensive players in the ACC and in the country next year. So very excited to see what he can do. But a lot riding on this year. There's no doubt about that. I do like Clemson this year. I think they are someone that will likely be in Charlotte at the end of the year. I think they know the importance of this year. Dabo Swinney knows it. I think Cade Klubnik knows it. And I think they know they have to deliver. So I'm very excited to see what they can do. This is a somewhat of a make or break year for Dabo Swinney and kind of his legacy in college football in some ways. So it'll be really interesting to see all of that unfold. I think Dabo Swinney is someone that is rather polarizing around college football, so some will be rejoicing as Clemson, falls if they do fall. Some will be celebrating if they, start to rise back up. So it'll be really interesting to see all of that unfold. I think this season will tell us a lot about what the future holds for Dabo Swinney. But that will do it for this edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a ton to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It means a ton to us. It makes a huge difference. Also, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram for all of the updates that you need. Obviously, this is March Madness time, so my guy Nelson over there on the Basketball Podcast will get you fully taken care of there. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys tomorrow.